Now, Aston Villa have just spent over £50 million on Johan Manzambi, who's an extremely exciting young Swiss talent. He only made his full debut in the Bundesliga in April of last year, so it's been a rapid rise. But Villa fans may be aware of him from the Europa League final, where he played against them for Freiburg, and of course wider football fans will know him as one of the breakout stars of the World Cup. But after speaking to people on and off the record who followed Manzambi's career, I'm going to explain why one coach who knows him well has described him as the diamond of Swiss football. I'm going to talk a little bit about why Unai Emery might be the man to polish that diamond and make him a key figure in Aston Villa's summer rebuild. My name's Adam Bate, I'm a football feature writer for Sky Sports. I'm going to put the article I've written for Sky about this in the description. But what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Bruno Berner, who is a former Freiburg player, former Switzerland international, who actually worked in the academy setup in Switzerland before becoming one of the top coaches in the country. And what he does is he helps me break down why it is that Manzambi made this rise as a player so quickly, what his strengths are as a player, maybe what his best position is, and I think most importantly, why he could be such a good fit for Unai Emery at Aston Villa. Now, I'm not going to get too bogged down in his player biography. You can find that on Wikipedia if you like, but Manzambi is 20 years old. He's a Switzerland international who starts out at Servette and then he gets the move to Freiburg in Germany, which is a club with a great reputation for developing talent. And then he has this incredible World Cup where he gets 3 goals and 2 assists in no time at all, really. It's a tiny sample size, but in terms of goal involvements per minute, it's up there with Mbappe and Messi, which shows what a crazy summer he had. But let's get straight into his strengths, what he's good at, and why he's a good fit for Aston Villa. Now, Bruno Berner put it to me that he's a player who brings something completely different for the Switzerland team, and he actually thinks that they would have beaten Argentina in the knockout stages of the World Cup had Manzambi not missed that game through a minor injury. And Murat Yakin, the head coach of Switzerland, he's actually described Manzambi as a street footballer, a player who kind of thrives when he's given that bit of freedom. And I think that reflects the fact that kind of positionally and stylistically, Manzambi's a hard player to pin down. So in terms of style of play, Manzambi ranked in the top 20 in the Bundesliga for possessions won in the middle third, but he was also in the top 20 for take-ons completed, or successful dribbles, if you like, however you define that. So this is someone who runs at people with the ball, but he's very capable of winning it back. That's a pretty rare combination for the same player. You speak to scouts, they don't expect the same player to be high on both of those metrics. I think that partly explains this next bit, because in terms of position, he's someone who's played out wide and in the middle. Now you look at his minutes for Freiburg last season, you'll see he was mostly left of centre and midfield, but he's played a lot in a more advanced number 10 position and even on the left wing. Now Berner thinks that actually because of this dribbling ability, he might be better on the wing at the moment because he's so mobile and he's still learning the game tactically. Here's Berner talking to me about that.
Well, the thing is, this is what we, the coaches, like sometimes, is you can use him in different positions in attack, but I would say I rather see him wide, in wide positions and winger position, and then it really depends what you want from him. If you want him to look more for depth, to go in behind strikers, behind the defense line. Obviously, you put him on one side. If you want him to come more inside, you put him on the other side. So I think he's flexible. For him, it doesn't matter on the left or right. So I think he played both positions, but I think he likes to rotate with players. Because he's a flexible player, so he likes to play for teams. They're rotating a bit. I don't see him just fixed in one position.
Now, I'm not so convinced that Manzambi is going to be an out-and-out winger for Aston Villa, but if you think about the way that Morgan Rogers and John McGinn are used by Unai Emery, they make those movements from out to in, and Manzambi's really good at this. So if you see his position laid out on a formation graphic, here he is in the Europa League final, you might think from this that he's a midfielder, but then you see the positions he actually takes up. This, for example, is one of the goals he scored against Bayern Munich last season for Freiburg. It comes from him driving inside from that left channel and beating Manuel Neuer. But then there's this goal against Mainz, which is even more dramatic. If you look at the still from this game, this is where Manzambi picks the ball up, and that is going to end up with him scoring a goal. He's quick, he's smart, he's a ball carrier, he's got good close control, he runs at people, and he can shoot. Now, the key thing is going to be how he fits in at Aston Villa, not just tactically, but how he responds to Unai Emery's coaching. Now, I'm a massive fan of Emery. I've interviewed him many times for Sky, and I believe that now Pep Guardiola is no longer in the Premier League. I think he's got the best career record of any Premier League manager. But he is a coach with very specific demands, a very specific way of working. I don't think it's a coincidence, for example, that Villa are heavily reliant on a settled group of players. He's someone who takes a little bit of time to get used to his way of working, those long video sessions. You think of Yuri Tielemans, he's a great player, but it took him maybe half a season at Villa before he persuaded Emery that he could be a regular starter in that team. He's someone who's got incredibly specific demands, and that takes some getting used to, and some players don't make that adjustment. So on the face of it, when you hear Murat Yakin talking about how Manzambi is a player who needs freedom, that could be a bit of a red flag, couldn't it? Because Emery's not necessarily the coach who's going to give you that freedom. But Bernard's got a different take on it. He actually thinks that working with Emery could be the best thing to happen to Manzambi. Now that's because Emery, with those video sessions, what he's looking for is for players to involve themselves in their own development. He wants them to be invested. He's given them extra videos to watch outside of training. In the past, he's even given players books to read. If you're going to succeed under Emery, you've got to be engaged with that. You've got to be engaged in wanting to develop. And I think the signs with Manzambi, from speaking to people, are that he's exactly that sort of player. For example, there's a great story from Freiburg when he was a teenager in the B team, and he asked the coach to go through the game plan with him again because he wanted it explained thoroughly. Now, Emery's going to respond to that kind of attention to detail. So yeah, I think that's the most intriguing thing about the transfer for me, because look, there's no doubt about the talent that's reflected in the fee. This is a player who can do pretty much everything you would want someone to do in the middle of the pitch, on and off the ball. He's versatile in his positioning, and he's young enough to get better. But what I'm interested in is the fit and the why he's going to get better, because you don't just improve by being parked in a Premier League team. It comes through coaching, it comes through development, and the relationship that you have with the coach. And I think that relationship between Unai Emery and Johan Manzambi at Aston Villa is a fascinating aspect of this transfer. I'm going to be really interested to see how it develops. If you do enjoy this style of football analysis, where we look a little bit at stats and tactics, but we also try to speak to people who are closer to the story, then please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think of Johan Manzambi's move to Aston Villa.